Welcome, everyone. I'm Walt Lascos with the Cooperative Credit Union Association, and welcome to Medford, Massachusetts, and basically Meet the Press. I am honored today and privileged to be on stage with Carl Stevens, WBZ Radio. Carl, thank you so much for being with us today and giving us some time so that we could talk a little bit about working with the media.
It's a pleasure.
And I think now we have about 30 minutes for today's session, so let's move on this. Carl, let's begin.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about your background. How did you get to where you got today?
Well, it took a while. It took a while. I've been doing this for a long time, folks. I started in 1983. I had come up to New Hampshire to go to grad school at UNH, so I got a master's in English, but mostly I was just playing drums in a rock band, riding a motorcycle, and getting in all kinds of trouble, and I had no idea what the future would hold. When someone in an acting troupe that I was in suggested that maybe I go to a local radio station because they wanted to hire somebody to follow along with the presidential candidates back in 1983. Because, as you may know, New Hampshire has the first in the nation primary. And I thought, what the heck, I'll give it a try. I've got a good voice. I've done some acting. But the fact of the matter is, Walter, I had never had any journalism experience at all. But I got in there. The lady says, you got a good voice, you got the job. So I figured I'd have the job until the primary, which was 2 months away, and I've been doing it for almost 40 years.
There you go. There you go. I mean, your career spans there almost 40 years. I mean, you must have seen, God, all kinds of things over that course of that time.
Yeah, there really has been, because I'm a general assignment reporter. We were talking earlier about when I went to Havana, when the Pope was there, the countless presidential campaigns. I was there for the inaugural address of President Trump, and as well as others. I've been to 5 Super Bowls, but I think my favorite story was in 2004, Walter, when I was in the locker room after every playoff game for the Boston Red Sox. And of course, at that time, they hadn't won a World Series in 86 years. And I stood on the mound in St. Louis after game 4 and picked up some dirt and looked at it and thought, this is history. So it's been a fun ride.
Now you put the dirt in your pocket, right? So
nope, I left it right there. I left it right. I thought about it, but I thought, no, that's wrong. I just dropped it. Anyway.
Well, let's go. So basically, folks, you see, I mean, when you hear Carl talk, you look at his background and all, we are privileged to be able to have him as a resource to talk to him today about how we should be working with the news media, because it's something that we all need to know. If we're going to be effective in our job of communicating what credit unions do, if we're going to be effective in communicating what's going on at your credit union and looking to have newspaper coverage or radio coverage, there's certain elements that come into play. And if you do it right, you could have a higher level of success. And if you do it not so right, it's like a waste of time. So I think everything we have to hear from Carl today will help us all become better at communicating and working with the news media. So to begin that, at that whole perspective, how does it work, Carl, let's say at WBZ?
Yeah.
So, we hear you on air reporting a story that's going on. It doesn't just happen there. Somebody has to contact the station or contact the assignment desk and say, this is happening. And how does the whole process work from start to finish?
When you talk about a newsroom process, there are so many limbs on the tree of possibility, and every day is different, and reality just is not predictable. So there are different types of stories that we'll do. Certainly at BZ, we do a lot of breaking news stories. There's a fire over here, a crash over here. But we also do stories that are more human interest stories, and I think that's where the credit union will come in. For example, I just did a story today on a young man from Georgetown. He's 18 years old, goes to St. John's Prep, and he created a Braille trail, a quarter-mile Braille trail from Danvers. Somebody had hit me up on Facebook, and it appealed to me because it's a teenager doing something good, which is something of a rarity. Anyway, I speak from personal experience, perhaps incorrectly, but it resonated with me. And so I would suggest, as you're pitching stories as credit unions, to certainly keep big picture messages in mind, but keep in mind that those messages should come through the form of a single individual. Don't make it complicated. Keep it simple.
So this one came and tickled your fancy on Facebook.
Yeah.
So are you basically, this is interesting because, okay, I'm a little bit old school and I know there's certain processes that would work, but it's curious that, well, let me ask you it this way then. So is there a variety of channels that someone could use to get a news tip to, let's say, WBZ or a newspaper? You know, I mean, does it have to be an email with a news release? Can it be something through Facebook? Can it be a fax? I mean, how does that work?
Because there are so many avenues of communication, it can work in a number of different ways. Let's first talk about press releases. Those need to be succinct. Don't even put an attachment on it, because chances are things are moving so quickly and we have so much coming at us. We're not going to click on the attachment unless there's something very appealing in the headline. Make it simple. Put right up the top what it is that you want to say, what it is that you're proposing that we cover, so that we understand immediately what we're talking about. A credit union has decided to gift a certain senior center this amount of money because this happened. Make it simple. Give me a time and a place and a reason to go. So that's number one. You email that to the station. Another avenue is certainly Facebook and Twitter, and that is contacting the reporter directly. And you can certainly do that. I get those pitches, and this one resonated with me, and it's purely subjective. You know, one person's apple is another person's orange, and that in that particular case, it resonated with me.
So that's interesting, because sometimes, you know, you think about the way it works, where you have assignment editor or something, and going through the assignment editor to give.
Well, you still do that. You still do that.
Okay.
To some extent.
Okay.
You take that, let's say I, as an individual reporter, see that press release, and I'll say, hey, I like that. So I'll run it by Kate, who's really the editor who you're talking about in the morning up until noon anyway. She's really the straw that stirs the drink around here, Kate Gallagher. And I say, Kate, have we done a story similar to this? Because she's got the big picture in terms of content. I don't want to duplicate what we're already doing.
Correct.
She knows what everybody's doing. So I'll say, Kate, have we done a story like this? Number two, do you like the story? Number three, can I do it? And that's pretty much it. But you're right. You do go through an assignment editor.
Because I know a lot of times you hear people talk about like targeting. You just don't send it to like 5 people on the news team, but you look for who might have that beat. If you're talking about banking or finances, they look for whoever's doing.
Let me just interrupt you right now, Walter, because in the radio and television space, and to a large extent the newspaper space, because of significant downsizing over the last 10 years, 20 years really, there are very few beats. You know,
most of us are showing my age.
No, not really. I mean, you know, we just don't have the personnel to have that level of expertise.
I never thought of that. Yeah.
Folks might remember back in the day when Channel 4 had Joyce Cole-Haywick as an arts and entertainment reporter, or Brian Leary on Channel 5 was the court reporter. That was his beat. You don't have that anymore.
Oh, interesting. You know, is there a difference, in your opinion, between like news release, press release, news advisory?
Yeah, an advisory will really give you a heads up that something's coming up, and we largely get that in the crime space. The district attorney has got an availability at 2 o'clock this afternoon to talk about the arrest of so-and-so. So that's a news advisory. A press release is more, like I was talking about earlier, about letting us know that something is going to happen, usually in a human interest space. Sometimes it's kind of a news.
It's like a who, what, where, when kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah, with a little bit of background. Let me give you an example. I just did a story today, actually. This says, this is the advisory. It has this is about Pine Street Inn. It has the executive directors of the Pine Street Inn, her contact information. This is through a particular PR agency, Elevate Communications, their contact info. The headline is, Pine Street Inn announces $50 million key moments campaign to sustain permanent housing. So they're making a transition, as they're half a century old, from temporarily housing the homeless to more permanent housing. And that, to me, it's appealing, because I've seen these people on the streets, and I think we're all tired of it. And they're trying, and this is a credible organization, just as credit unions have been around for decades, well, for a long, long time, longer than decades. But the Pine Street Inn has been around for a long time, and that longevity gives them a level of credibility. But you see, it's very simple. This is what we're kicking off, and it's up to me to decide whether I'm interested. And we were. So we contacted the executive director. She was immediately available, which is another thing to consider as you pitch these stories. If you have a contact on this release, make sure that that person knows that he or she is a contact and is going to be getting a phone call. That's right.
And if you have your phone number on there, then make sure you got your phone and you answer the phone, because when a reporter calls, if they want to do a story, you know, the whole thing, like you were saying earlier to me, timing too. And, you know, and you got to be there, because, you know, I think it comes down to also the fact that, you know, credit unions aren't the only ones sending anything to the news.
You got that right. I mean, they're coming from all over the place, thematically, geographically. We get a lot of stories.
So then, how is it that someone gets, theirs be like cream that rises to the top? What really do we need to do that really will help you take notice?
Timing is important. Understand what the big picture is. We were talking earlier about when I was in Havana covering the Pope. Tom Brokaw was there. Dan Rather was there. I was talking to him that morning. And by that evening, they were all gone because the Washington Post had a headline about President Clinton having an affair with his intern. That trumped everything. And what you have to understand before you pitch a story is, will they have eyes and ears to see and hear them, or are they too busy with something else? So understand what the big picture is. And then also think about when you would send that release. Don't send it at 5 o'clock in the afternoon in the just the heart of afternoon drive. Send it when the day is getting started. When the assignment editor, send it at 8 a.m., 8:30, maybe 9 a.m. Send it out there. Okay, so watch your timing on those two issues, and then make sure you've got a story worth telling. And I know that's where subjectivity comes in.
Correct, and I think we could talk a little bit about. So, sometimes people say, well, geez, we're going to change our sign out in front of a credit union. We're going to do a news release about it and get press coverage. Have a story. How would you instruct those that are watching about doing something? If you're going to communicate with the news people and expect coverage, you have to have something of meat. So what is that meat?
Well, the meat varies depending on who the people are you're talking to. For example, if there's a credit union in Essex County, get to know who at the Salem News or the Lynn Item or the Marblehead Reporter that you might want to contact. Start small and establish a level of communication, because let me tell you something. As a reporter who, we've got listeners all over the place, but I'm stealing stories from the local newspapers. So I would start there. I would try to establish, first of all, because it's easier. You might see them on the street. You might see them at the Chamber of Commerce breakfast, wherever. Establish some level of contact with local media and get that avenue going. First of all, because there's going to be some low-hanging fruit there for the local media, because they're looking for easy content as well. They're downsized as well.
Right. So let me just jump in quickly. So because then on that basis, would you suggest that, all right, I just got hired at a credit union. Now I'm responsible for doing communications, news, that sort of thing. Should I reach out to someone at the local newspaper and introduce myself so that they know who the contact is, just in case anything, you know what I'm saying? Building a relationship before we even talk about coverage.
Anytime we're talking about media, we're talking about people. We're just human beings. And you contact eye to eye. You say words, I hear words. I talk, you listen. It's called communication. It starts with a 1 and it goes to 10 if you establish a level of communication. Also, I think you just mentioned somebody who might just be hired, looking maybe for a little advice. They should call you. They should contact the PR agency, which you have on retainer. You guys are paying dues. And, take advantage of that resource as well.
That's right. And it is. I've said that how many times to all of our members that, if there are issues, or if you're looking to do some type of a communication or kick off something at the credit union, looking for some assistance in getting and attracting news media, obviously call me. We have resources at CCUA that we could put to work for you to help you in achieving, more success in what you're doing. So let's go back to what we were saying about the whole process. If we're looking then at we have building relationships with the press and all that. Also, what forms it is if we're managing communications, if we're looking to deal with the news media, if we're looking to communicate stories that are happening at our credit union that are going to attract media attention, I think my opinion is that then we should also be, I don't want to say news hounds, but we should be knowledgeable of what the media covers, how they cover things, so that when we go to present it to someone like you, it's falling in that attractive, let's say, sphere that's going to get your interest.
And you had a perfect example of that, and I think this is where we should switch hats, maybe, where I should be asking you what you did, because the story of the cab driver in Quincy is a wonderful example of what you just said. Taking an individual story, extrapolating from that, and making it yours. And I wonder if you could share that story.
Yeah. And that was a big win for us, because if you remember back several months ago, Richard Spencer was a cabbie with Quincy. He had a lady who was about 87 some years old get into his cab and asked it to go to the local Lowe's, right? So he engaged her in conversation as he was driving, and he found out that she said that her grandchild was arrested and in jail, and that she needs to go to Lowe's and buy these gift cards so that she could go back and help get him out of jail. Richard, thank God, said, "Lady, I think you're being scammed," and he drove her to the police station instead, Quincy PD. They took down the paperwork, the whole bit, saved her. Richard saved her from losing a lot of money. So I read about this in the Boston Globe, and I called Isaiah, who I work with for media placement, and I said, "Isaiah, we have to go after this. I need to get a hold of how we can get a hold of the Richard Spencer, the cab driver. I want the mayor from Quincy. I want the local credit union from Quincy. Let's work together, and we have to make this happen. Like within the next several days, we need to do a presentation at the Quincy Senior Center to the Senior Center. I'll give $500 from the credit unions. I got Quincy Credit Union say they'll give $500, so we've made a donation of $1,000 to the Senior Center so that they could help educate the seniors there about elder financial exploitation." And this was done as a tribute to Richard Spencer, the cabbie, who was a good Samaritan that we wanted. We got TV coverage. We were all over the place on this thing. So it was just like a perfect. It was on a silver platter.
So let's take that as an example, a couple bullet points. You mentioned, for example, we needed to do it quickly. And the reason for that goes back to timing. The story was still hot. Things get cold so quickly in our business, in the media business. Secondly, you said we got to find the cab driver. A story is told through the eyes, ears, and mouth of a single individual. When you have a single story, then it resonates. Then it has significantly more meaning. And then also the fact that you took that singular event and made it big picture and reminded us all of the campaign that you have telling elders of what the dangers are. This is a perfect example.
And I think also from a standpoint too, now you're dealing with radio.
Yeah.
We talk newspapers, but we also have TV. And it reminds me of when you're dealing with a situation like that, visuals.
Do you have a big check?
Well, yeah, we had the big check. Oh, yeah, we had that big check. But this will go back, and I shared a story earlier with you when I was doing a program back in the day when I was on the West Coast during the Iraqi War.
Yep.
And what basically we were doing webcasts, and we would set it up on military bases, have the family come in, and they would webcast holiday greetings to their deployed loved ones. This is before Skype and all that sort of thing, right? So basically what I had there is that since families were coming in, they were coming in with their little toddlers, I got this little turkey outfit. I got like a Halloween costume.
Yeah.
And of course, when the little one would come in, we put the turkey outfit on them. They'd be standing there. The wife is crying, all this. So of course, TV loves the tears. This visual, that was on the front of more newspapers, throughout the country when we go on bases, because it was just visually stimulating of what you're looking for, since you're talking also a visual medium, be it TV or even a photo in a newspaper.
And look at the two examples you just gave. Those are good stories. Goodness knows that those of us in radio, television, newspapers, we do go to the burning buildings. We do go to the homicide scenes, but we also like a good story.
Yeah.
And if you give us those, we might show up. We might be there. Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah. I would say, do you have some examples as well as things that you saw that were kind of really caught your eye that might have been, somebody that really did a great job when in getting attention of the news media for coverage?
This goes back to timing a little bit, and it wasn't even anybody local, but it was a release. Let's see if I have it down here. Because New England is so football crazy, and maybe because I've been to, of course, we're all Pats fans. Yeah, here's the release right here. Now, here's one that caught my eye. You asked, what caught your eye? Here's the release. Nearly 40 million Americans to wager on the NFL during the league's 100th season. That was just before the first weekend of games. And so you got the timing. The timing's perfect. And then I go to this, and it says, among NFL fans, according to this survey, how's our time? Okay, good. Among NFL fans, look at that team. The New England Patriots are the favorites to win the Super Bowl, like 23% over the Kansas City Chiefs, 8%. And that's very different than what they're saying in Vegas. These are the NFL fans. And I said, get me this person. So I ended up, it's somebody I'd never even heard of. What the heck are they? Anyway, it's around here somewhere. It's the American Gaming Association. So I called them. They got somebody on the phone. And I said, what's this about NFL fans and Patriots? And he said, yeah, everybody thinks the Patriots are going to win this year because the Patriots always win. So it was good sound. The timing was perfect because it conjoined with the start of the NFL season, and it was Patriots and anything sports, it sells.
Interesting.
It's good.
You know, another thing that comes up that popped into my mind was, you know, we were talking before about news releases or using the different channels to get information to, let's say, you know, the assignment editor or to you as a reporter.
Yeah.
But I, as say, working at a credit union, I don't want to be really bothering you guys because it's busy.
Yeah.
But when I send something, how do I know if it got through? Is there a way that I should call or do something
That's always,
to confirm?
Yeah, that's always tricky business because we often get those follow-up phone calls and you get too many of them and you just don't answer it.
Yeah.
So I would say if you want to follow up, go ahead. You could call the newsroom and ask for the editor if you're doing that. But make sure you've got something worth selling. And I know that's a very subjective thing because what you think might be good might be in a larger orchard that we're dealing with right now, a pretty small tree. So I know that's a difficult thing. But if you're sending out a release at 8:30, you want to make sure the station got it or it's on their radar. Give them a call at 10. You know, give them 90 minutes. But don't call more than once in a day.
Well, exactly. Yeah, because I always feel funny about that when you're pitching stories, that sort of thing.
It gets wild. Yeah. It gets wild in the newsroom.
But that's the thing, too. We also have to remember we're not the only ones looking for a story. Like we said earlier, you guys are getting inundated with all this stuff about everybody wants to get coverage.
Well, everybody wants free publicity.
Yeah.
Come on. And so exactly. I get that. And we're used to it. You know, we're all pretty veterans in that space. But it does go to a great extent to timing and certainly to message in terms of whether that story is received. But I also think it goes back to establishing a level of communication at the local level. And once you do that and you've established that over a period of months, you have a good sense at a credit union of what a good story is.
Yeah.
You know, because Jim at the local news, he ran that. And he's saying, give me something like that again.
Well, you look like up in New Hampshire, for instance, the credit unions do what's called See You for Reality Fair. So they're involved with the high schools where they teach finances and all that along with the folks at the high school.
Yeah.
And then what they do is they bring the students into a gymnasium and they set tables up. And then they say, okay, we give you so much money, make-believe money.
Yeah.
Now you have to go and start your livelihood. So they have to learn how to budget. They spin the wheel of life to see if they win the lottery.
The wheel of life?
Yeah, well, exactly. So it's like, you know, if I won money or maybe I got sick and now I have a doctor's bill, and they have to manage their money. How much are they going to spend on rent? Are they going to buy this sports car or this more, you know,
how long have they been doing that?
Oh, a long time now.
It's an annual event.
Yes, it's big.
They get coverage
every year. We get some coverage. We had, I think Fox did some stuff for us here.
Because that has some good visual elements.
You know. Oh yeah.
So that's,
exactly. I think that's a perfect, and I know that they do a lot of promotion of that because it is.
Yeah.
It's visual. You get young people. You get something that's needed, financial education. You know, and I know Rhode Island is doing, the credit unions down there are also doing something very similar.
So you've got financial education for young people. You're trying to get the word out to the seniors about not getting scammed.
Well, here's the thing: the seniors. Now, this is something that we work on a lot too. Because when we do, the first one that we did was down in Johnstown, Rhode Island. First lunch and learn. We had the lieutenant governor there the whole bit, and our
and this is at a senior center.
This is at a senior center during lunchtime. So you bring the news people in, right? It's a ready-made story, right? Because I got the seniors now. I can interview about being scammed. I have here's the credit unions, what they're doing. I have everything. So when I walk out of there as a reporter,
it's one-stop shopping. We love that.
There you go. That's right.
Because we're so fractured with time and so many different time pressures and journalistic pressures upon us, the easier you make it for us, the better. The better it is.
That's again.
And one-stop shopping is a good way to go.
We have, any questions if you want to check from
absolutely
viewers?
This is very helpful so far. We're getting a lot of people online asking questions. This is one from Dory Dawkins. She says she knows you from WOKQ days up in New Hampshire.
Oh, Dory, yeah.
She's now working as a marketing specialist for New Hampshire Federal Credit Union. She has a number of questions, but she says, Carl, which are more beneficial, local talk radio segments, 30 to 40 minutes, or podcasts these days?
Well, because I have a bias in radio, I'd say the local radio broadcast, but I also like the reach of a podcast. I mean, I can just post something on Twitter and anybody in the world could see it. And I'm not sure, Dory, and by the way, I'm sure you're just as beautiful now as you were back in the day.
She's going to love that.
I'm a reporter. I just call them like I see them. I'd say there's no reason why you can't do both, Dory. Get that radio segment and just turn it around as a podcast. It's no heavy lifting. Take it 10 minutes, click it, boom. Just figure out the avenue of podcasting. Once you get that established, you can do both virtually at the same time.
It's something that we're working on at the Better Values, Better Banking level, because it's media, because it may be radio,
Exactly.
It may be a download, it may be a podcast. It's media, it's content.
Exactly.
How you consume it, and I consume it, and a 14-year-old consumes it may be different. So really, it's calling what you do media and distributing it is what we're finding. And I want to ask you a question from my standpoint. After 30 years of marketing and advertising, it's all about the story.
Yeah.
If there's no story and it's just we had an event, it's not going to get through to someone like you, is it?
No, it's not. But we've talked about that, I think, to some extent, about going through one individual, a one-person type story, but also what appeals to a story at the local media level and to a larger regional media level. Those are going to be two different things. So what is a story? What makes a good story is to some extent subjective, but I think any good story has some key elements in it.
We've had a few different people ask this question, and they're talking about online wire services, and which ones do you suggest are the best to subscribe to? I think first it goes back to what you were talking about. Build the relationships locally in your own town first before you're just blanketing an online service, correct?
Well, yeah, I'm not sure if they're talking about subscribing to a service like a wire service. If that's the question, then I would go with Associated Press. But I think the priority should be to establish communication at the local level.
Well, we don't want to go with UPI?
They don't even exist anymore. Come on.
Well, think about this. There used to be lists, that you would subscribe to, and those lists would put you on all. The times have changed in your world.
Yeah.
How to reach you is different today in 2019 than it was in 1980.
And I think it's a lot better because there are a lot more avenues of communication.
And I think they may be talking too about, okay, so I subscribe to a service, I put my news release out there, and they're doing it for me. They're sending it to all of Europe, obviously.
Which is fine.
Yeah.
Another question here. In your eyes at WBZ, is there a story that comes to mind about a credit union you sought out instead of them finding you?
No, and no. I have virtual no knowledge of what a credit union is. I've been doing this for almost 40 years.
We're changing that today, folks.
And you really are. You really are. So the answer to that is no. I haven't pursued a story with a credit union, and a credit union hasn't come to me pursuing a story, which to me seems somewhat remarkable.
Well, I think that's why CU Senior Safeguard has been so successful, because we have a story about our local, adults in our communities being scammed, and the credit unions as a group are trying to help change that and educate. So we're coming to you now with that story, and now you're paying attention.
Well, I think you might hear that on WBZ sometime in the near future. If you get me one person, if you get me Edna, who was scammed, or how the credit union prevented that from happening.
It's done.
Done and done.
I already have the person that
done and done.
willing to do it.
Well, as long as.
But now you're competing with an anchor up in New Hampshire that's looking for the same.
Good.
Carl gets it first. Let's see, a couple of more here. What content do you feel is more often picked up by, let's say, you? What kind of content are you looking for on a daily basis?
For me in particular, I'm looking at human interest stories. And that's just because of my decision professionally, which I made just a couple months ago. And that is, after nearly 40 years of fires and homicides and the things that bad people do, I really want to focus on the things that people do that are good. And that's my individual to say it's something of an aberration, but to a great extent, I'm playing with house money, and I can make my own calls.
I wonder if anybody's watching from the Archdiocese of Boston. You talk about good stories. And well, I even know, but I'm on a committee with Boston City Hall, and there's some folks that work in the inner city with elders and all that.
They're doing amazing.
It's amazing stuff that they do.
Councilor O'Malley was just talking about the elder peer-to-peer help program that they have. So that's another story I'll be picking up.
That's right.
As we go to wrap this up, let's kind of circle back and just the reason we're here, Carl, you're a veteran in this space, and the folks watching should get education from you on what to and not to do. Let's kind of wrap up with simply a couple of bullet points of what these marketing people should think about when they're trying to reach the media.
A couple bullet points. I would say, first of all, watch the timing. Don't sell rain when it's snowing outside. Understand what the environment is. Secondly, understand what your story is so that you can tell that story to a friend. And then you can tell it to me in simple, concrete, practical terms. Also, keep it simple, both thematically and geographically. what Walter mentioned earlier, at one location, one idea. Keep it simple. I'd say those are 3 bullet points to keep in mind.
Carl, thank you so much. It was
My pleasure.
Absolutely a pleasure having you today. And we definitely owe a debt of appreciation to Carl for spending some time with us and giving us some direction on this, which means now we're all on the hook to do a better job in dealing with the news media. Thanks for joining us today.